Now, before we can start looking at the different aspects of strategy, we need to define what we mean by that word strategy. Now, there are many different perspectives out there amongst academics, practitioners and commentators about what strategy is. Indeed, there are strong arguments that have gone on within the field of strategy over the last decades about answering this very question. Sometimes I think there's more agreement about what strategy is not rather than what strategy is. So let's start there. What can we say strategy is not? Well, strategy is not about being the best in an industry. Strategy is about being different to different people. So within that, strategy is about making a choice. Also, strategy is not about a single action. It's not about internationalizing or about cost cutting on its own. Strategy needs to be thinking about the whole organisation, the whole portfolio of actions and activities that organisation is engaged in. Also, strategy is not about a goal or a vision. It also needs to include the details about how you get to that goal or vision. There are some areas where there is agreement. Firstly, strategy is about looking at the whole organisation. It's about being holistic. And within that, how are you framing the firm's long-term direction and its scope? I'll give you an example why this is important. Look at this close-up picture. What do you think this is, and what would you do with it? Do you recognise it? I have, when I've asked this question in class, had answers back like, well, it's a sole of a shoe, or it's a colander for draining your spaghetti in. When you step back and see what it is, you see that it is the top of a computer, not something that you'd want to drain your spaghetti with. In many ways, organisations do the same thing. Managers focus very, very closely onto their own areas of the business, their own areas of expertise, and make decisions based on that narrow perspective. Without taking a wider view, huge mistakes can be made that can lead to the decline and even failure of that organisation. So you do need that holistic view, that whole view of the organisation. Also, strategy needs to include a view of the aims and ambitions of the organisation. And within that, taking a view on what the responsibilities are of the firm to society. You might take a view that the responsibility of the firm is to deliver value to customers, or to deliver value to shareholders, perhaps reward and employ its staff. But beyond that, what role does it have in its local community? And wider than that, how is it delivering societal good? And the firm needs to capture that into a vision that includes what its purpose is, what its core values are, and also put in place a mission that guides its actions over the next 10 to 30 years. Now, in looking at that objective and aims and looking at its responsibility, there are different views out there. Whether the prime responsibility of a firm is to satisfy its shareholders, and obviously to do that you still need to deliver to your customers to get to that end result, or does the firm have a wider set of responsibilities to society, the so-called shareholder perspective, where the firm is voluntarily looking to add value to a broader set of stakeholders rather than focusing on the shareholders. Another commonality across the different views of what strategy is: you need a deep understanding of the firm's business environment. This has never been more important. With the constant bombardment of issues, new trends, global events, all these different pressures coming from outside the organisation impacting on what it does. To decide strategy, to set strategy, even discuss what strategy of a firm is, you need to have a structured understanding of the impact that those events and trends are going to have. Another common area across the different views about what strategy is that it must inform how the firm gains competitive advantage. And in that, how is the firm unique in delivering value to its customers, so that customers or other stakeholders are choosing to come to that firm rather than going to its peers. Now in that, the firm has to be different. And to be different, you have to make choices about how you compete. And as important, and if not more important, you have to make choices about what you're not going to do. Too often, managers choose extra things to do, but they are uncomfortable making those choices to not do things or to stop doing things. But it's in that choice, and then be able to focus your resources onto those choices you've made and take resources away from those things you've chosen not to do, is how you gain competitive advantage. Now, even within those areas of agreement, there are still a wide range of disagreements amongst academics. Henry Mintzberg, a famous academic going back in the 1980s, talked about there being different perspectives, different schools of thinking around what strategy is. And he talked about 5 different perspectives, or 5 P's of strategy, as he called them. He talked about this view that strategy was a plan. And often when you go and talk to managers or the general public, often you'll hear this is how strategy is popularly seen. So effectively, the firm is putting in place a long-term ambition and then devising a detailed plan about how to get there. But others have a different view. Some say no, strategy is not about a plan, it's about a position. You adopt a position in an industry and focus on that industry position, and that focus is what your strategy is. Another view of strategy is that strategy is a ploy or a competitive move. You move in a different way to your competitors, and strategy is about finding those strategic moves that you make in your industry. Another perspective that Mintzberg himself popularises is that strategy is a pattern. It's a pattern in a stream of activities. Less conscious thought going on from the centre of the organisation here. The people in a business are responding to developments in their day jobs and acting accordingly. And those multitude of decisions bubble up into a coherent stream. And it's that coherent stream of activities that is the firm's strategy. Then finally, Mintzberg in his 5 Ps talks about strategy as a perspective or a paradigm. And that is the way in which your firm is behaving in that world. Later on, in the 1990s, Mintzberg extended the number of schools of strategy. He wrote a book called Strategy Safari, in which he talks about 10 different schools of strategy. Other authors have talked about far more. With all this disagreement going on, how on earth do we approach strategy as practitioners when we're faced with a challenge to develop a strategy for our organisation or to renew the strategy that already exists? Well, all these different perspectives of strategy reminds me of a poem. It's a poem based on an old Hindu proverb, and it's all about these blind men who go to see the elephant. And they all come across the elephant. And the first man comes across the elephant and comes across its side. And he says, "This elephant, well, it's just like a wall." The next man comes along and encounters the trunk and says, "No, you're wrong. The elephant is just like a snake." The next blind man comes to the elephant and encounters its tusk and says, "No, you are both completely wrong. The elephant is just like a spear." Another man comes across the tail and says it's just like a rope. Another one the ear and say, "You're all wrong. It's like a fan." And then the poem goes on around how they then spent the whole night arguing about what the elephant was. And whilst all of them were partly right, all of them were wrong. And this makes me think about academics in the field of strategy. They all encounter aspects of this thing called strategy, the elephant of strategy. They all experience different parts of the beast. And whilst all of them have specific insights, they don't all have the full picture. Some people say that makes strategy hard, but that is only in terms of how you treat those different opinions. You can see those different views as being a toolkit. So each can be used to provide different insights about the organisation and what its strategy should be. A bit like a doctor with a medical bag. When you go to the doctor with some complaint, the doctor just doesn't get out his stethoscope and listen to your heart and make his diagnosis based on that. No, yes, he does measure your heart. He uses the stethoscope and the theory that sits behind the stethoscope to get insight on what's going on. But he'll then take out his blood pressure monitor and measure what your blood pressure is. He still won't make a decision. He'll probably measure your temperature as well, maybe ask for other tests. And it is in combination of what each of those tools is telling him that he'll make his diagnosis. With this approach and this way of seeing the different theories of strategy as tools, it puts focus onto the strategy development process. How do you go about choosing or analysing your strategy? That process takes place over time and is informed by managers' experiences, their know-how, their intuition even. And to that, you need to add the insights provided by these different theories of strategy. As we'll see across the module, whether you use the thinking of Michael Porter, sticking with his thinking and seeing what insight that gives you. The manager would then go on and say, "Well, thank you, Michael. I'll go and look at it from a different perspective." So at that point, use perhaps the thinking of Jay Barney and the resource-based view. Provide a different insight into what's happening in that organisation. Perhaps using some work by Porter and Kramer, looking at the CSR strategy and what social issues the firm should be adopting in its strategy to give another insight. And all those different insights go in to help the management team make better decisions. And by getting these different perspectives, those decisions are going to be more robust. So synthesis across these different perspectives of strategy don't come from trying to meld them together and make some sort of Frankenstein model out of these different theories. The synthesis comes in the decision-making process. you're keeping these views of strategy very separate, gaining the insight from them, and then in that process of strategy, you are synthesizing together. That means that within strategy, there are strong links into leadership. Leadership becomes crucial in ensuring that decision process happens appropriately, is open to the insights that are provided by those different theories of strategy, and that decision-making process has momentum. So, in conclusion, what is strategy and why is it important? Well, strategy is about the whole organisation, the full range and depth of the firm's activities. It is also needs to recognise the organisation's changing relationship with the environment and how things that happen in the external environment and the internal environment will impact on the firm and its strategy. It is about the creation of long-term value. It's not about what happens in the next planning cycle. It is looking out into the future, forming views about where the organisation is trying to go to, setting goals and objectives for that, and then also looking at how the organisation will get there. Strategy directs the distinctiveness of the organisation. How is it adding value to its customers, to its stakeholders that mean they are coming to that firm? And so it has competitive advantage, and through that is delivering superior performance. To make that happen, strategy involves making choices. Choices about what the firm will do, and very importantly, what it won't do. You can't hedge your bets. You have to focus your resources, your capacity onto the choices you've made. And then finally, strategy is just as much about the process through which you are analysing and using the insights from your analysis as it is about what emerges from the strategy process, the content of strategy, and the context of strategy, what's happening in the external environment. In the next video, I'm going to look more deeply at this question of competitive advantage and look at the different views that we'll encounter in the module about where competitive advantage comes from. I'll see you there. Thank you for watching.